Hi everyone and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. Many Muslims who want to let us know that Muhammad was a brilliant person and that Islam was an amazing, fantastic, wonderful religion, love to bring up quotes about Muhammad by famous people. They do that selectively. They pick the good ones and ignore the bad ones. And they also quote good things that people said about Muhammad or Islam while completely ignoring the bad things they said about Muhammad and Islam. In the case of H.G. Wells, for example, many of them love to quote him on Muhammad when he says something good, although in the same source, he also heavily criticizes Islam and Muhammad. This way, they want to make you believe that no matter what you heard, people you respect actually respected Muhammad, and so should you. Worse, they even believe that themselves. Recently, someone who left a comment on something I tweeted, where I compared Muhammad to Hitler, drew my attention to Carl Jung's analysis of the psychology of Hitler and Hitler's similarity to Muhammad. So I went a little bit further into this and found some very interesting material. And I combined this with Hitler's views on Islam, which I was already aware of. To quickly remember who Carl Jung is. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and a famous student of Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. He became so important because Freud saw him as his successor and a future scholar of psychoanalysis. But Jung took psychoanalysis and from there on developed analytical psychology, also called Jungian psychology. Carl Jung occasionally talked and wrote about Nazi Germany and Hitler because he was alive in the same era. In his writings and talks, he mentions two quite interesting things. In the book known as The Symbolic Life, Miscellaneous Writings, we find a short reference to Muhammad, where he says, "We do not know whether Hitler is going to found a new Islam. He is already on the way. He is like Muhammad. The emotion in Germany is Islamic, warlike and Islamic. They are all drunk with a wild god." He then goes on talking about how Hitler, through motivation by himself and from the people, steers Germany toward a new future. In another case, where he is asked about Hitler, he says the following: "There is no question but that Hitler belongs in the category of the truly mystic medicine man. As somebody commented about him at the last Nuremberg Party Congress, since the time of Muhammad, nothing like it has been seen in this world. His body does not suggest strength. The outstanding characteristics of his physiognomy is its dreamy look. I was especially struck by that when I saw pictures taken of him in the Czechoslovakian crisis. There was in his eyes the look of a seer. This markedly mystic characteristic of Hitler's is what makes him do things which seem to us illogical, inexplicable, and unreasonable." So in two cases, Carl Jung compares Hitler to Muhammad and says that he's mysterious, or in more modern words, weird, but also a very strong leader like Muhammad, that there is a world inside him that we don't understand. He also compares Hitler's leadership and actions, his establishment of Nazism as a new national ideology, to how Islam, an idea that replaced everything, was established by Muhammad. He says he's like Muhammad, and the emotion in Germany is warlike and Islamic, and drunk with a wild god. This is something very offensive to the regular Muslim. In order to better understand why he compares Hitler to Muhammad, we should probably understand what he thinks of Hitler. When asked to consider Hitler his patient and analyze his psychology, Jung made the following assessment. "Hitler was in my view primarily an hysteric. Already in the First World War, he had been officially diagnosed as such. More particularly, he was characterized by a subform of hysteria, pseudologia fantastica. In other words, he was a pathological liar. If these people do not start out directly as deceivers, they are the sort of idealists who are always in love with their own ideas and who anticipate their aims by presenting their wish fantasies, partly as easily attainable and partly as having been attained, and who believe these obvious lies themselves. In order to realize their wish fantasies, no means is too bad for them, just because they believe they can thereby attain their beloved aim. They believe they are doing it for the benefit of humanity, or at least of the nation, or their party, and cannot under any circumstances see that their aim is invariably egoistic. Since this is a common failing, it is difficult for the layman to recognize such cases as psychopathic, because only a convinced person is immediately convincing by psychic contagion. He exercises, as a rule, a devastating influence on his contemporaries. Almost everybody is taken in by him. This is very funny because you could really think that he's talking about Muhammad here, especially if you've ever read about Muhammad's life and history. Just like Hitler, Muhammad was a very troubled individual who had very controversial and megalomaniac ideas. Just like Hitler, Muhammad rose to power through normal means first, with the agreement of those around him. But not much later, he started eliminating everyone who opposed him. In Medina, where he first established his rule, he rigorously looked for reasons to get rid of the local Jewish tribes that weren't amazed by him. As he found those reasons, often ridiculous reasons, he either expelled them or massacred the entire tribe. He ordered his people to kill elder ones in Medina who thought he was mad and misguided. He eliminated those who asked the people to stop being blinded by him and to turn against him. Just like Hitler, he established a system where others who don't follow his ideas either follow him, subjugate themselves to him, or are fought and subjugated by force. Muhammad glorified the fight for the greater good so much, for Allah, that in the ideology he introduced, it is considered a major sin, one of the deadliest sins, to run from the battlefield. Just like Hitler, Muhammad banned everything that was contrary to what he brought. Just like Hitler, Muhammad's idea brought superiority to his kind, the Muslim, and inferiority to everyone else, so that they are disgraced and humbled. And just like Hitler, Muhammad sought to widen his newly found empire as much as it was possible in the 7th century. Unlike Hitler, Muhammad's ideas were successful, and as soon as he died, his followers angrily conquered everything they came across and brought it under Islamic rule. Islam was now a hegemony, a giant empire, and everyone had to live by it. Of course, all the bad things that I just mentioned about Muhammad are not accepted as such, or as bad things by most of Muhammad's followers. Because the indoctrination of Muhammad's religion, Islam, is so strong, it teaches you that each and every one of these things that I mentioned were justified. Muhammad had a reason. It was the other side's fault. His followers did nothing wrong. The Banu Qurayza, the Jewish tribe that was entirely exterminated by Muhammad with the beheading of 600 to 900 people and the enslavement of their women and children, well, they asked for that, or the numbers are exaggerated, or it never happened, or Muhammad did nothing wrong. Sounds familiar, right? Of course, with such militarism and enthusiasm and indoctrination, there was a lot in Muhammad that Hitler could look up to. Carl Jung is not the only one in this triangle that makes a connection between Nazism and Islam, or Muhammad and Hitler. Hitler himself did that. Albert Speer, a very prominent Nazi in Hitler's inner circles, writes about one of his memories with Hitler. He explains that a delegation of Arabs told Hitler about the Battle of Tours, a battle where the Christian Franks defended France and Europe from the invading Arab Muslims. This is a deciding event in history that prevented an early Islamization of Europe. Hitler found this unfortunate. He thought it would have been much better if Europe had been Islamized, because the Arabs wouldn't have flourished in Europe, they were inferior, but the local Europeans would have become Muslims, and led the Mohammedan Empire. Speer recalls Hitler as saying, "You see, it's been our misfortune to have the wrong religion. Why didn't we have the religion of the Japanese, who regard sacrifice for the fatherland as the highest good? The Mohammedan religion, the Islamic religion, too, would have been much more compatible to us than Christianity. Why did it have to be Christianity, with its meekness and flabbiness?" He also notes that if the Christians had lost the Battle of Tours, then we should in all probability have been converted to Mohammedanism. That cult which glorifies heroism and which opens the seventh heaven to the bold warrior alone. Then the German races would have conquered the world. Christianity alone prevented them from doing so. Hitler had an admiration for Muhammad and Islam because of the warlike nature of Islam, because Muhammad was a warlord. He established a religion of war, not of peace. We would be living in a horrible world right now if Islam had overcome Europe, or if Hitler had managed to do this to Europe. I would say, when evaluating Islam and Muhammad, comparing it to Nazism and Hitler is a good place to start with, even when you are a Muslim. Sadly, Islam is a religion, which means that a normal person who never had these horrible ideas about humanity and the world grows up inside this religion. But hopefully, someone who grows up in that and who doesn't agree with all those things can learn more about it, and as a result of a lot of thinking, can get out of it, just like I did, just like so many others did. I want to end this by repeating what I said in my tweet. If Muhammad was a 20th century figure, we would treat him like Hitler now. And his idea, Islam, would be considered as controversial as Nazism, not have 1.6 billion followers, and falsely be called a religion of peace. I never thought I would find something like this looking at Carl Jung. Thanks for watching. If you like this episode, please don't forget to like, to subscribe and to share. Most of my videos are not monetized. If you want to support me and my cause and want to see more, you can support me on Patreon. I appreciate all your support very much. I'll be back very soon. Have a great day and stay away from Islam.